Hello and welcome to Dice and Demons. I'm Emma, and in this video I'm going to show you how to paint one of the Raptadon Chargers from the new Seraphon range for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So I start off as I usually do with a model that's been primed using White Scars primer from Citadel, and then I'm using a contrast paint, and this one is called Raptadon Turquoise, and it is sort of a darker turquoise color that I don't often use as the base color for something. I find that it's a little bit too dark and a little bit, well, not quite vibrant enough. But for this paint job, I thought it might actually work really well, because my intention is to use this as my base color, and then I'm going to paint some red and orange feathers on top of it. And so I thought it would be a nice darker contrasting color to use here. Then for the main body of the dinosaur birdie feathered thingy, I used a paint called Death Reaper, which is from the Duncan Rhodes paint set. And I thinned it down so that it would go on nice and smooth, but as you can see here, I thinned it down too much, so it was almost more like a wash or something. That has nothing to do with the paint, it was just me putting in too much paint medium and then being a little bit too lazy to actually bother fixing it. I just thought now I had the paint on the wet palette, I might as well use it, and then I would just do a couple of goes using the same paint. And I did that, and it covered really nice. The paints from Duncan Rhodes are actually quite cool to use. I like them a lot. So this was just, well, yeah, that was just my mistake completely. After I was finished painting the base color with the Death Reaper, I took some Wolf Grey and I mixed that with some of the Death Reaper, and I did progressively lighter layers to use as highlights here. And I tried filming the entire process, but it turns out filming something that is very dark grey, almost black, is very tricky, especially if you don't have you know, the greatest camera in the world. I still have to use a cell phone camera here for my takes, so from time to time they have a little bit of trouble focusing. So this is more or less some of the only footage that I could actually use, but I hope you can still see the general idea. I do some glazing and I just build up the layers fairly slowly. I mean, you can always go with, let's say, 50 layers and do something that just looks completely awesome and perfect. But I didn't want to do that because, well, I don't have that kind of patience for glazing. And also because this was sort of an idea. I wanted to see what it would look like if I did what I usually do with my bright colors, but then had a darker, less vibrant tone as sort of the, well, the predominant color, the one that actually took up the most space on the model when it was done. And so that's what I did here with the idea of the birdie having dark gray skin, and then giving it a little bit of highlighting just to make sure that you could see that it wasn't just, you know, one single block color, but something that was supposed to be there, that it was painted with an intention, more or less. After I was done painting the skin, I started to highlight every single feather on its own, as you can see here, using Mephiston Red. I wasn't completely happy with the way the skin looked, to be honest, but I thought that it was good enough, and so I decided to just move on. The Mephiston Red is just an ordinary paint from Citadel, and it's not one of my sort of favorite paints, but I thought that as a sort of base color, as an in-between color between the Raptadon Turquoise and the brighter neon colors I'll be adding next, I actually thought it would work really well, and I was quite happy with the way it performed. You can see I highlighted every single feather individually, and then I also did some strands on the bigger feathers just to make sure that you could see there was some sort of texture going on, just to add a little bit of visual interest. Then I took my first fluorescent paint, and this one is called Radar Red. All the fluorescent paints are from Huge Miniatures, and if you're interested in getting some of them for yourself, I have a discount code with a link to the website down in the description below. That'll give you 5% off, and also help you support this channel if you would be inclined to do that as well. I quite enjoyed this part of the painting process a little bit more than I enjoyed painting with the Mephiston Red. And there's nothing wrong with the Mephiston Red. It's a perfectly decent color. It's just that this, I mean, there's just so much more going on once you start adding fluorescent paints, and I just think it's more fun, more satisfying, and it's a little bit easier to see that stuff gets done. And I'm just, well, I'm a simple kind of person with simple pleasures, and highlighting stuff with fluorescent paints, well, that's just, I don't know, that's just something I find really, really fun to do. It was a little bit time consuming, as you can probably imagine, because it has so many tiny little feathers, but I thought it would be worthwhile, because the body is so, well, monochrome. I mean, it is basically just different shades of black, gray, and white. So I thought I wanted to make sure that the individual feathers would stand out and be visually interesting. Next step was adding a highlight that was orange, and for that I used laser orange, which is also from Huge Miniatures. And again, this step is just a lot of fun because it takes the model from being just sort of one tone where you just have the, I mean, admittedly very bright red, but it's still just red. And now you're starting to add in a little bit of, again, more visual interest and a little bit of color variation and grading, and it just I don't know, it just builds so much depth for not a lot of time invested, I think, for this step. And it's the same for the last layer of highlights, as you can see I'm adding here, which is Starfire Yellow, also from Huge Miniatures, a sort of nice cold yellow color, and I just add that to the tip of the feathers. And I only use this on the larger feathers because I thought if I started adding them to each of the little tiny individual feathers on the neck, for instance, I would end up with something that did not look like it was red with some very vibrant yellow highlights, but something that looked like it was more just orange or yellow, and I didn't want that. So the smaller feathers were highlighted just with the radar red and then a touch of the laser orange, and then the Starfire Yellow, as I said, was reserved for the larger feathers. And you can see here what that ended up looking like. I also decided to go with green eyes, just because, I mean, I thought green was a nice contrasting color to the red feathers. As I said, I'm not completely convinced by my own paint job on the skin. There is something missing, I think. I'm not sure. But as I said, this is my first sort of real go at painting sort of just pure black and gray skin. So there's just room for improvement, and I think that's okay. This is, I mean, it's fun. It's not something I'm painting to do on an entire army. It was just a fun painting project. And so having mistakes on your painting projects, that's completely fine. And I think it's as it should be, because that means you are challenging yourself and going out of your comfort zone, and that's always a good thing. Next up, I started working on the rider, the Skink rider for the Raptadon, and I had painted him using the same Pterodon turquoise contrast paint as I used on the feathers and the dino. And then I just quickly gave him a bit of dry brushing using a bit of white on a makeup brush. I find that makeup brushes make excellent dry brushes. So the idea when I painted this with the Pterodon turquoise at first was actually that I wanted to paint him white, because I thought it would be really cool if the entire model had a sort of lava theme going on. So you could have like the black stone cracking, and then you could have the sort of fire from the feathers, and then it could be sort of like the ashes on top with the rider. And I so badly wanted to paint him white, but then once I had painted the Raptadon itself, my eyes were sort of caught by the striking scorpion green contrast paint, and I was just I wasn't having that much fun painting the black skin. I mean, it was a challenge, and it was fun, but I just so much more enjoy painting with bright colors. And so he ended up being, well, not white but green. But I do swear it was my intention to paint him white. It just kind of didn't happen. Yeah. That's how it goes sometimes, I suppose. I then painted the scales on the back using the Pterodon turquoise again, because I wanted to paint them the same way as I had painted the feathers on the dino. And so I needed them to have the same sort of base color with the dark Pterodon turquoise. Now that I had ruined my idea of painting something monochrome and toned down, I might as well just go for it 100%. So I decided to highlight the already quite bright green skin with some fluorescent green paints. And for the first layer of highlights, I used some quantum green, also from Huge Miniatures. And again, it was just mixed with a little bit of painting medium to make it sort of the consistency of a glaze, but probably slightly thicker because, I don't have the patience, as I said, for many layers of glazing, or perhaps I just don't really have the skill set for using for doing it correctly yet, because it's not a method that I usually use sort of I don't usually commit to it fully because I get impatient and want to get going and do something else. But yeah, again, more layers of glazing would probably look even better. Then for the next layer of highlights, I used the Starfire Yellow, the same paint I also used for highlighting the green and red on the feathers. It's, as I said, it's a sort of colder, cool, slightly yellow, slightly green yellow, which means that you can both use it for highlighting the orange and the green, and it doesn't look strange at all, and that's one of the reasons why I actually really like that paint. Then, because, as I said, I thought I wanted to paint the entire model white, and that's why I chose the Pterodon Turquoise as the base color for when I did the dry brushing. I wasn't really happy with the shadowy colors just of the bluish green. I thought it looked a little bit boring, so I mixed up a little bit of red paint from the Duncan Rhodes paint set, and this one is called Sword Hill Burgundy. I mixed that with a little bit of the green paint, and I used that as a shading color. Then the last layer of highlights I did was using the Starfire Yellow, just mixed with a little bit of white, and I thought that would really make the green pop. I might as well just go, as I said, all in now that I had decided to completely ruin the whole idea and the whole reason I actually started painting this model in the first place. I then just highlighted the sort of feathery thing on top of his head and the scales on his back using the exact same colors and methods as I used on the dino. And here you can see the final Skink rider. I think on his own he actually looks quite fun. I mean, green and red are obviously contrasting colors, and so they work. I think they tend to work well together if they don't have the exact same sort of tone or hue. So if you have a little bit of a dark desaturated green and a darker desaturated red, the paint job tends to look quite bland and a little bit boring and lifeless, to my eyes at least. But if you mix it up a little bit and make sure you have some different tones and some nice vibrant highlights, I really like green and red together. And here you can see the final result on with the Skink rider on the Raptadon's back. And I'm not sure if it would have looked any better with a white rider, or if the green is actually the way to go here. I don't really know for sure. I also tried changing out the background, either black or white. I don't know what works better. But yeah, it would probably have been fun at least to try it out with the white rider, just to see the sort of contrasting between the black and the white, and then just having sort of one shade of neon colors with the red, orange and yellow instead of this, slightly more busy paint job I did here. But on the other hand, I mean, it's a creative process and I was having fun, and that's what counts, right? And of course, because I use the fluorescent paints, as you can see here, it will glow under a UV light. So that was what I wanted to show you today, and before you leave, I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the wonderful people who support Dice and Demons over on Patreon. So thank you so much to Thomas Messen, Scott Broadway, Jordan Hollins, Andre Correa, Anthony Paul Castro, Queen's Wolf, JJ Walsh, Gwenael, Mola, TJ Kubiak, Mando Project, Starcon85, S. Beer, Echinocacus, Firelord21, and Elliot Philby. If you also want to support Dice and Demons on Patreon, I'll leave a link to that in the show notes, and I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you want to help support this channel in other ways, I always really appreciate it if you leave a like, a comment, if you subscribe to the channel, and you can also, of course, go follow me as Dice and Demons over on Twitter and Instagram, where you can stay up to date on my painting projects. Remember, if you have any sort of questions and ideas, suggestions, stuff you'd like to see in future videos, just let me know in the comment section. I try to get back to every single person who comments on my videos, but of course from time to time I might miss one, so it's not on purpose if I don't answer you. I really try my best to answer every single question and comment I get. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!